All right. Wow. I was wondering whether we'll have any seats left, but thank you all for coming. On behalf of Kiran Malhotra, who is Executive Director of Thai organization here in Silicon Valley, she couldn't be here due to some personal reasons, so I would like to welcome all of you. My name is Naveen Best, and I am the chair for Thai Silicon Valley programs. And basically, I'm not. We have our host and co-chair Nirav Beri sitting here in the middle of the panel. He will be talking about the program, but before that, let me take a few minutes to just tell you about Thai. For how many of you are here for the first time? Wow, that's wonderful. So, it just takes 30 cents a day to become a member. And we can continue to provide you such programs that will be filled. So, Patricia is right at the entrance over there, so she'll make sure she can get your names and make you a member. And you'll never regret that, and I'll tell you a story about it. So Thai, basically Kiran and we have a staff of 3 to 4 other staff members. So that's how this organization is run. And can you imagine, we've been able to produce very great programs, but it's the only nonprofit organization which holds a yearly conference where 3,000 or more attendees attend, and it's all done by volunteers, about 400 to 500 people. So just like me, Nirav, all these panelists, we are all volunteers, so that's why I recommend and suggest that we become a member of Thai organization here. So Thai was founded in 1992 by a small group of highly accomplished entrepreneurs and senior executives in Silicon Valley who decided to give back to the society and how to be role models, mentors, advisors, and even potential investors. So, and most of them came from Indus region, and that's how the original name, the Indus Entrepreneur, originated, which of course today means talent, ideas, and enterprise. So Thai is an open and inclusive organization. So, like I said, anyone can become a member, so please feel free to do that. And the mission of Thai is to foster entrepreneurship, as you can see here, right here, written in bold. And Thai believes in nurturing and cultivating the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, as we all believe that that's the single most and biggest instrument for creating prosperity among the human beings. So with that, that's the basic, thesis behind Thai. Thai has 4 constituencies, and the number one is sponsors. So we have a number of sponsors like companies, as you saw, a number of names popping up in the screen: Microsoft, SAP, a lot of venture capital firms, legal firms, consulting companies who provide the financial support to get this organization running and be able to provide these programs to you at almost very minimal cost. And then second constituency is charter members, and we have a number of them in the audience. The charter members are again invited and nominated and based on invitation only. These are highly accomplished entrepreneurs who want to give back to the community here. So a lot of them are here in the audience. I see Mr. Fish, who is our president of Thai also. He just walked in. He's the chief salesman and chief volunteer. So those charter members, could you please show your charter members? Yeah, Sanjay is a board member as well as a serial entrepreneur. His company just got funded, SparkJart, another mobile company. And so please make sure you can network with these charter members. So they can turn out to be your advisors, mentors, and investors, as well as customers. So I think you should take advantage of that. The next one is constituency is members, like which I already talked about. Any of you can become members. The fourth constituency, which is very important, is, as I said, all the volunteers who help this organization run very smoothly and be able to provide and continue to foster entrepreneurship. Now, what Thai does is we hold a number of programs. It's all around entrepreneurship. So one of the flagship programs we have is ThaiCon, which is the largest entrepreneurial conference, and we have been holding it since Let me ask someone who's been here, when was the first TiCon held? 94. So 94 was the first time, and since then every year in the middle of May, sometimes second or third week, we have TiCon. And in the beginning, I remember I attended the first one in 1994. We had about 500 people in Fairmont Hotel in San Jose downtown, and we were really excited about it. A 2-day event, and with sessions from how to start a company, to how to raise money, to how to launch, how to exit, etc. So now it attracts over 3,000 attendees from all over the world in the middle of May. And if you have not been to one, please make sure you attend one next year. And I'm sure you'll find it highly energizing, highly stimulating, and very inspirational. So that's one of the flagship programs. Then after that, we hold a number of industry-specific programs, which we continue to change, like we have the mobile program today, and then we have life sciences, cloud, social media, and as well as energy programs, where we have, they are again run by volunteer co-chairs, like we have Nirav, he's one of the co-chairs, I'll be introducing shortly, as well as he has another co-chair, Akash Agrawal, who is not here, he's traveling, and then similarly we have in the other programs. Now, we also have some other programs like Growth Company Forum, which will have some events coming up. So please check out our website, TiSV.org, and you can see the upcoming programs, and some of them are listed here as well. And also you can see the videos of the past programs. So that's on the specific programs. Then within last 1 year, we have launched few new programs because, as I said, we always continue to see how we can continue to provide value to the entrepreneurs locally, or across through other chapters across the world. Yeah, I forgot to mention that TI since 1992 has grown to over 57 chapters across 13 countries around the world now, all the way from Germany, Sweden, UK to Australia, Japan, Singapore, and in India in a number of cities, as well as in US and Canada and across a lot of cities. So I think it's all through volunteers. So I think we've been able to do a great job in that, and we're really proud of it. And so now the 3 new programs we launched last year. One was last year in August we launched was TI Angels, which is basically to provide seed capital to aspiring entrepreneurs or those who are looking for money. How many of you are looking for money here? Okay, so you can go to TiSV.org website. There is a TI Angels section, and you can apply there. So it's a 3-step process. You apply there, it gets screened by a screening committee as well as domain experts. Then 8 to 10 companies are invited every month, second Monday of every month, and then from there 3 or 4 companies are selected. Then they present in front of 60 to 80 angel investors on 3rd Monday of every month. And so far we have 10 companies which have been funded from here, including even SparkJot, which also right away got funded by a VC also, Inventors Capital. So that's so please make sure you can spread the word out to your friends who are looking for money as well. So TI Angels, and then second program which we launched was My Story earlier in March, which is about entrepreneurs to come and share their story, who have sold their companies or exited from their companies over the last 12 to 18 months. And we have had 6 entrepreneurs every month. It happens usually first Tuesday of the month, unless there was a holiday. So next upcoming one is on October 4th. In fact, I saw the entrepreneur who's going to speak. He's somewhere here, right there, hiding. Bhaskar. So Bhaskar will be coming here and speaking on October 4th. He sold his company Quick to Skype back in January of this year, over 150 million or so, and he's going to talk about his lessons learned and what decisions he made, how he was able to make it a great success, which is a mobile video sharing technology platform he had created. And similarly, in fact, one of the panelists here, Carl Mehta, he was also here. He shared his story back in June. He had sold his company within 3 years to Visa, called Placement. Anyway, he'll talk. He can answer some of the questions. Yeah. And so if you know of any of your friends, by the way, who have sold their companies recently, please contact me. I'll be happy to. I'd love to have them come here and share their experiences. I think it's always inspirational to have entrepreneurs come and talk about it. third new program we just launched 2 months ago. It's called Thai Startup Pitch Fest, which is to have entrepreneurs, so randomly chosen entrepreneurs, like 8 or 10 of them, pitch in front of 3 or 4 venture capitalists. So we had in August, and so 2-minute pitch, and they get feedback instant. So there is no Simon Cowell there. I think we may have to get one. so they get feedback, and the one which is chosen by all of them gets directly in front of screening committee of Thai angels to present, their business plan. So that's the third one. So anyway, so those are some of the new events, and we'll continue to bring out new programs. And if you have any ideas, please feel free to contact me. And so, without taking any more time, what I would like to do is invite Nirav Berry. But before I invite him, let me say a few words. So Nirav actually is a longtime friend of mine. I just realized we went to school together in Santa Barbara, and I was telling Andreas that I just barged into their apartment and started living there without paying for a few days. So anyway, Nirav is a successful entrepreneur, and he was co-founder and COO of Cellmania, one of the first app store platform. Because most of you started realizing about app stores only when Apple came out with that. Then now you have Android marketplace, but his company has been there since, I think, since 2099. So then he successfully sold it to Research in Motion last year, and right now he's leading their platforms and applications group as vice president at Research in Motion. So with that, I'd like to invite Nirav Berry, who is also our co-chair, and thanks again to him for arranging a very accomplished group of panelists over here. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank everybody. Can you all hear me in the back? Yeah. Right, good. No. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. Okay, so thanks again for coming up. It's really exciting to see this kind of turnout. A little bit more about my background, and we'll go around the floor here. Everybody will talk about what they're doing in mobile payments. So as Naveen mentioned, I'm at RIM currently, and I look after the RIM App Store platform. As a lot of people know or do not know, RIM has one, just like Google and Apple do. And also as part of that, I'm also responsible for payment services. So things like in-app payments, carrier billing, and I work with several of the folks here to expand those areas for RIM. And the way we'll structure the panel today is in 3 areas. So we'll start off with what we call retail commerce. So how will people be using mobile phones in face-to-face commerce? Whether it's going to be NFC, whether it's going to be other forms of person-to-person in the shop, commerce using your phone. Then we'll get into mobile e-commerce. So people buying stuff on websites using their phone. And then, last but not the least, wallets, where we see those two things come together, and what synergies we see. So we'll kind of explore what the opportunities are, what are some of the challenges, and the idea is to just open the floor. We'll start off with some introductory remarks from the panel, but the idea is to open the floor for you all to ask questions. So maybe I'll start off on this side with Roger Desai. He's the CEO of Payphone, and maybe say a few words on the company. And
sure, thank you. So I'm Roger Desai. I'm the CEO of a company called Payphone. We're based in New York as well as San Jose. And Payphone's notion is that the 2 biggest trends in commerce today, which is that commerce is becoming global. So every kid in the garage who wants to create something wants to sell it to a global audience, as well as every brand. And commerce becoming mobile, meaning we're all trying to buy more and more things on connected devices. Payphone tries to address the payment processing for both those trends. So essentially, we make it so that you can use your phone number to pay for things. My story begins actually in the villages of Bangladesh, where my first company was a nonprofit that took IP from Accenture, McKinsey, and brought it to companies like Grameen Bank. And I witnessed firsthand early on the power of just what a phone and a phone number meant. So, we gave phones to villagers to run as businesses, and they would arbitrage the minutes. And most people laughed, so that these villagers wouldn't know what a phone is, or let alone a phone number. They'd have no one to call. But the first day, the first village, there was 182 people that lined up to use the phone. The phone number is the most ubiquitous notion of identity in the world. And so what payphone is about is using that as a way to make merchants make more money by allowing people to use their phone number to pay. Our investors include, I think, a really interesting set of people that give us a good perspective on where payments is headed. So we have mobile operators like Verizon and Rogers as investors. We have handset companies as investors. And we have financial institutions like American Express as investors. And so it gives us a kind of a good ecosystem of how things will come together to create a global payment capability. If I were kind of in the audience, one thing I'd be wondering is, like, there's so much confusion in this space, what are some things that I can grasp onto that'll be some of the guideposts of where success will come from? To us, it really is about the notion of identity. Think of the notion of just, instead of a 16-digit secret number that we carry around our wallets, your phone number, and that becoming a form of identity and a form of commerce between people. So essentially that's what payphone is. Payphone essentially allows merchants to accept the phone number as payment. It could be online, could be in a retail setting, and we process that payment and look for a funding source. It could be the operator bill. So in countries like India where there's 1% credit card penetration, the operator may be a good place to fund the transaction. It could be an underwriter that decides that this is a good opportunity to fund and underwrite a transaction just based on knowing a few bits of information from the phone company about you. Or it could be a credit card that is associated with your phone number. But our notion is that that's the most interesting, most ubiquitous way to make merchants sell more and sell more things on handsets and connected devices.
My name is Carol Riolini, and I'm the founder and chairman of OboPay. We're a mobile payment provider that operates in 7 countries now. Most of those countries are emerging markets, although we do operate in the U.S. and also in 1 country in Europe. The markets that we operate include, we always go to market with in-market partners that have significant assets to reach consumers, reach merchants. So for example, in India, we operate with Nokia that has a huge retail presence and consumer base in India, as well as UBI and Yes Bank. We operate in Kenya with Equity Bank and YU, the mobile operator called YU. We operate in Senegal with SG and Tigo. So, and in the US, we operate with MasterCard. So we always, we're an enabler. We have the platform and the operational capability to deliver mobile wallets and mobile payments, but our go-to-market strategy is to find local partners that add to those and reach consumers. I guess one of the things that, my perspective, I think OboPay is one of the only companies, we may not be the only one, but we're one of a few companies that operate mobile payments in developed markets as well as emerging markets. And an observation I have is that every market we operate in, it's different. There's different things you have to do to be effective, and I will comment on that as we talk about who's going to own the wallet.
Thanks, Scott.
Hi, my name is Carl Mehta. I'm founder CEO of PlaySpan. We started 3.5 years back and built the first cross-channel wallet for digital goods. The company grew pretty rapidly, mainly driving social commerce and social networks like Facebook's application ecosystem. We were recently acquired by Visa, so we're now part of the Visa's innovation and e-commerce as well as mobile commerce group. And Visa recently made an announcement around the global digital wallet. And Visa's perspective is that we look at the global market and we see that the solutions that are required for mobile payments are very different between developing countries and developed countries. So we have very specific solutions as well as platforms that we've launched in the developing nations. We recently acquired a company, Fundamo, in South Africa, which has a pretty large mobile payment traction in Africa as well as in some parts of India. And in the developed countries, it's a very different solution for point of sale, where mobile can be used as a point of sale or mobile can be used for point of sale. And we have several strategies. Visa recently made an investment in Square, which is a very fast-growing company for mobile payment as a point of sale. And besides point of sale, we are very active in the mobile e-commerce. Recently launched RTM, which is real-time messaging, where if you're going to Gap stores, we recently did a pilot with Gap. So if you're going to a Gap store, you can get a real-time Gap coupons right at the point of sale. So which is fully integrated into the point of sale as well as with your cell phone. So we'll talk about point of sale e-commerce as well as the global wallet strategy as we go.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me with this one? Yeah, I give things. My name is Andreas Stavropoulos. I'm one of the partners at Draper Fisher Jurvetson, which is a venture capital firm. We have a global presence through a network of affiliated funds managing about $6 billion across multiple funds. I'm based here and focusing mostly on early stage investments, although we have, for those of you that are later stage, revenue stage companies looking for investors, also a late stage fund, also located here. My personal background is in software, so all of my investments have to do with software in some place, some way, shape, or form. Being also European, was one of the first partners to focus on mobility. So I've seen the development of some of the successful platforms and things like mobile texting and application-to-person messaging and what have you. And specifically within the mobile payments area, one of our investee companies is Vivotech, where we're going to have a debate about near-field communications and to what extent things like the Google Wallet that just launched this week, that's powered by, among other things, by the Vivotech technology, is a thing that will stick or not, what the alternatives are, convenience versus information, etc. The only other thought I'd like to add in terms of potential topics to discuss with all of you is my personal interest about the difference with these mobile devices and the payment enablement, if you will, not just being about the convenience aspect of not having to pull out, let's say, a credit card, but about how many things could you do differently if you had the information that could lead to a change in behavior through a process that may involve a payment. And by that I mean things like, some were mentioned, couponing, the fact that you now have a screen to your payment mechanism, the fact that you can have loyalty programs tied to the ability to complete a transaction and close the loop, the ability to prove the return on investment of a particular marketing program, if you can now correlate it with the actual payment or the closing of a transaction, and things like that. So in general, using the internet and the fact that we're all walking around with ubiquitously connected devices to see if we can change behavior, and by doing that, create value for people in the ecosystem.
Hello, my name is Kurt Davis. I work for Boku. I run all global merchant acquisition for Boku, which means focusing on online merchants. Boku simply is a bank-grade payments platform for mobile. So basically, we're a financial enabler between carriers and online merchants. So what does that mean? If a user, for example, is playing Farmville and they want to go buy some Farmville cash, they would go up to Facebook credits, they would choose mobile, they would put in their cell phone number, and we would enable them to bill to their cell phone bill. So it's a very simple two-step process. It's a very frictionless way to pay. We can do this in over 66 countries and 240 carriers today. Most of these carriers, we have strong direct carrier relationships, which means that we have high payouts, fast payouts, and a very seamless conversion. So that just means more money for all of our merchants. In addition to that, we're funded by Khosla, Benchmark, and Andreessen Horowitz. We have a presence here in San Francisco, as well as London, Taiwan, Brazil, and Germany. So that's Boku.
Great, thanks. Thanks to all the panelists. So, does anyone have a starting question? Or otherwise, I will. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so if we consider the fact that just for purchases from your computer online, that fraud is 10 times higher than it is in the real world, do you, I'm sorry, so do you have some statistic that talks about, I don't think that's working. Okay, I'm loud enough. Do you have some statistic in your mind that translates to me, buying something from my computer online, an experience experiencing fraud to the mobile phone? Like, is there some statistic that you guys look at? Because, look, what if I lose my phone and, you know, anybody can pick it up and start paying stuff?
I think it's a great question. I'll give you a story that I think illustrates how to look at the picture. A few months ago, sitting next to a wealthy German guy who lives in San Francisco, and he commented that he and his wife had been to 40 countries in the past year. And I asked him how many countries did his credit card not work. And he kind of laughed, and his wife laughed. He said 22 countries where his card didn't work. But yet his AT&T phone worked in every single country. In fact, he used his phone to call the bank to tell them it was him. So think about what's happening there. The last country he tried to use his card was in Zaire. He was on safari. And think of the notion that when he landed in the airport of Zaire, that small telco had to talk to AT&T in real time to figure out whether to give him services, right, which are fairly expensive. And they didn't ask him for his billing address, his CCV, the kinds of things that our 1970s payment systems ask us for today. Right? The way that the existing financial ecosystem covers fraud is by throwing lots of friction. Like when you check out of somewhere and they ask your billing address, they don't actually need it. They just want to make sure you didn't find the card on the ground. So I think the fact that in that case, a small operator in Zaire was able to do business with AT&T, they probably never even met in person, I think is illustrative of what the operators have done to create a global payments platform. And actually, I think it's more, there's so many things that are happening behind the scenes that allow that trade to happen that I think, what Payphone we're about is taking the assets that the telco has about knowing who you are, where you are, and bringing that to financial services to make the transaction more secure. So we like to call that device DNA. So your phone number is just one attribute. Behind the scenes, there are other things that authenticate who you are, where you are, that are very powerful that we think we can bring into the financial realm.
Can I just add one thing to this? Because I know a lot about the online security if you're coming from a computer. I don't know as much about mobile devices. And I know the challenges that we even face with online fraud today, just from computers. Where do you compare yourself like right now in terms of the level of security you can provide from the mobile phone versus if I'm just online with my computer? And I know what goes on behind the scenes, checking your IP address and where you've been and all the matching or not matching factors. I mean, I know dozens of factors that we check just for the PC. I'm trying to get into the mobile phone aspect and understand where you guys are in that kind of security.
Sure, I'll take a poke at that one. So we at Boku, we put a significant amount of investment into risk of fraud systems, etc. But really, with what we do, you have a two-factor authentication method. So in the world of Visa, PayPal, MasterCard, it's really what you know, and then the other aspect is what you have, right? So if you have a device, and so and when we do this, we have two-factor authentication. So you would receive a text or some type of authentication, and you'd have to reply why. With that, there are also inherent limits in carrier billing. Carriers only allow you to charge maybe up to $100 a month, some a little bit more, some even less. And then you have per transaction limits. So in the world of security, if people, if you were going to commit a crime, you would want a very high return for that, for taking that risk, right? And so stealing your phone, sure, I might be able to get 100 foreign bucks, but like for the month, but that's really all I can get. And so there's a lot of strict policy around that, and there's other things that we do in order to monitor that, like velocity limits, blacklisting, credit checks, and all these type of things that we've built in our system to handle that.
There was a reference to, hi.
Yeah, one.
Go ahead. There was a reference to location-based marketing as an example of gap. I was recently at Dreamforce 2011, that is Salesforce.com conference, and they showed some very exciting technology that combines social media like Facebook and connecting consumers and their Facebook accounts and even their friends and all that with location-based marketing and variety of other kinds of things. Where do you see that technology going in practice with what you were talking about?
Let me address that. In fact, in some ways, I'm going to join the two. in that I see trade-offs in sort of both of these questions. And just to quickly address the first one, the reality is the statistics aren't there because we're not using these alternative methods of payment enough. I mean, we're using them in virtual good purchases where things like limits in terms of what you can do can apply, but they're not yet the preferred, method of payment for most people out there, which is why we have this, the panel today. We're talking about the future. So any statistics we might have had by now, the thieves go after the bank because that's where the money is. If there's not a lot of transactions in this space, it will not have attracted the attention of the real fraudsters. So whatever statistics we might have had, they're kind of irrelevant until we see this at scale. That said, I've never seen any of the security concerns of the security professionals really carry over to the consumers. For all the people saying about, oh, I'm afraid to use my credit card, what have you, everyone's been using the credit card online for a while. A lot of it has to do with who bears liability and what incentives there are in the system about who captures value for protecting what. And in the end, unless the consumer feels that they're incented to try something new, it's not going to catch on. We'll come back to that. Now, let's come to the question of the location real quick, because here's the relation of both of these. Everything has a trade-off, right? When I'm using my phone and I'm enabling, let's say, payment by having just my phone swiped, I'm trading off convenience for potential some lack of security. If I lose my phone, all of a sudden there's no additional authentication needed. Yeah, someone can probably take $100 real quick before I even know what happened. And then depending on who bears that liability, you can sort of, deal with that. Same with the location stuff. You're giving up some privacy. If you're willing to have things that track location or even things like social relevance of things around you and your profile, you're trading off some privacy, arguably, for hopefully some value. And I think that's a trade-off that people, whether they think about it explicitly or not, are prepared to make. So to the question about where the landscape is, a lot of people are making bets right now about what is a proper way to bring, let's say, context awareness, whether it be about location or closeness to friends or social interests or context interests or whatever, into a marketing outreach effort of any kind, whether it be a push notification or a coupon or what have you. Some of these are kind of scary, like for people who are not used to it, to kind of all of a sudden get something, whether it's on the web or on their phone, that indicates to them that someone or some program or whatever did something based on their physical location can be quite jarring, especially for those of us that are, over 40 years old, let's say. That said, it, to me, all comes down to what is the trade-off of what value are you bringing to the consumer, and for that, what are you explicitly or implicitly requiring of them in terms of their privacy. A lot of the younger generation, we have analysts in our shop that are in the 20s, they have no issue with checking in and turning auto check-in features everywhere where they go. And they get utility out of that. They get friends and sort of casual encounters of people that they wouldn't have gone out and called to come find them. And in their lifestyle, in their age group or whatever, that's a good thing. In my case, that's pretty scary. So different strokes for different folks.
So, not to belabor too much on the security, but I think security is a very important question, and I have a slightly different take than my fellow panelists here. It took 50 years for the card networks to get the fraud and risk management to the level where it is. And in the card networks, we have a four-party system. I don't know how many of you understand that, but issuers, acquirers, merchant, and the actual card network, like the Visa, MasterCard. And we have a counterparty default system where, if one party defaults, what happens and who actually takes the risk. And ultimately, the risk is taken by the issuer, and they actually say, yes, we are taking the risk, and we will hold the bag, on the money. In the carrier side, nothing exists like that on the mobile payment. Today, if you ask a carrier, they don't know. They will point fingers. It's a merchant who should be taking the risk. So I think as much as there is so much enthusiasm about mobile payments, and I would say security is one area which there is no real answer today, including the ecosystem is not set up, in terms of distributed risk system is not set up. There's no one party who is willing to stand up and say, I'm going to take a risk, I'm going to take the risk here when the money is lost. So if there are entrepreneurs here who are looking for ideas in mobile payment, security is the place.
So I wanted to make a couple comments. I agree with most of the things that were said. I think that the phone, by the nature of the device, is inherently safer than a car. I think we've talked about some of the reasons. We know where it is, or the service providers doing payments and doing financial transactions know physically where the phone is because it's communicating that. So there's another reason. If a consumer loses a phone, they know it within 6 minutes. Whereas it takes an average consumer 18 hours to figure out they've lost a debit card. So by the nature of the device, it is fundamentally a safer device. That's my assertion from doing this for a long time. That being said, anybody in the financial transaction business with this device or with any other device knows that a big part of the job of any payment processor, any financial transaction actor, is to identify fraud and prevent it or deal with it. So that's a big part of the jobs that all of us are doing, is we have to make sure that all these things that happen on this network are safe for the consumer, safe for the merchant. I don't agree that the card networks, I do understand a lot about the four-party system, and I think it has huge value, but there are places in the world where that value doesn't exist. Merchants aren't acquired, consumers don't have cards. And in those cases, the systems are being developed, the agreements are being made where transactions can happen, and the risk managers and the financial arrangements between the acquired merchant and the consumer are being established without necessarily riding the four-party system. So I want to agree with the statement about that four-party system, but I don't think that's essential everywhere in the world for those systems to evolve. And in fact, Kenya, where we operate, which is totally the most advanced mobile payments market on the planet, they're resolving the whole risk and security issues without the traditional association and four-party system. I don't want to say that, I don't want to be against that, because I think both will operate in the world, but in markets where this is a greenfield, where there are no existing systems and cash is king, then we're seeing new systems and new models.
One follow-up on that one. It is possible probably to use biometrics for phone protection. For example, if you're doing a transaction, you can use biometrics to identify the person who's doing the transaction. Is that something that is feasible or being thought through?
Absolutely, and in fact, if you're, I just was on Twitter, and there's a new article in, I think, India Times about this just today. The predictions are that this whole biometrics will become a very important factor, and then you have UID in India. It has so much potential to do. Is that what business you're in? So
I work on UID.
Yeah, so biometrics has huge potential. Not going to be necessarily relevant in the U.S. market because, frankly, it doesn't solve an important problem. But in other areas in the world, it may be very much a key factor for authentication and for identity.
Along that lines, I was just recently in Asia. I spent about 5 or 6 years there as well, but Lenovo has already rolled out some mobile phones where you have biometrics authentication. In fact, China Mobile is moving very, very quickly in the mobile payment space. And not only there, but in Japan, you can actually check out on a taxi with Suica or Passmo, and you can use your thumb on your phone that recognizes that this is the ownership of the phone. So I think, and then along Carl's lines of security, so I think it's going that way, and it'll very quickly move that way as well. And security will be very important when you start doing things like in Japan, where you have the option to have your bank system debited, you have your credit card behind it. You can also do carrier billing and a variety of things. So you do have a high risk propensity if somebody steals your phone, and you do need security. However, I would, in our point of view, from what we've learned with U.S. carriers and European carriers, is that security is very much on the forefront of their mind, and they're already processing tens of billions of dollars of transactions. They have very sophisticated payment networks and billing networks already. So I wouldn't discount what they know and what they're doing, and how they're putting checks and balances in place today, and how companies like Boku is helping them do this and build that out to make sure that we gradually build the ecosystem together. I mean, if Verizon buys a bank and becomes a bank and allows $1,000 worth of transactions, okay, it becomes an issue. But until that day happens, which it happened when Docomo bought a bank in Japan, I don't see risk and fraud being an immensely big issue in mobile payments. That's our point.
Just a slightly different question. With SAP, and we are recently into mobile payments. I also find that we're very dependent upon telcos to get some of the products out. Is there any way that you see the banks going directly? Is more a question for Visa. Are you guys looking at that space at all? Because we see that we are dependent on the telcos to get a product out to market for mobile payments.
Well, there are several models. So there are bank-centric models, there are carrier-centric models, and then there are very ecosystem like whoever, like Google is a platform-centric model, or Apple or Google. And I think there are case studies out there in different countries, like Carol referred to Kenya. You will see that you might have several mobile payment systems which are purely bank-driven, and there's no carrier-centric. So carrier is just a channel. In India, they use UDDI, which is a very low bandwidth channel, and you don't need to do kind of any large agreements in terms of you don't need a smartphone, you don't need a 2G or a 3G network. So yeah, there's the banks have evolved, and they are willing to support with their. They want to enroll their consumer to a mobile payment. You've seen Google doing a deal with Citibank, and they're enrolling the consumers through Citibank.
Hi. I'll just add one comment to that. When you look at why that's the case, the mobile operator has when you go to get a new phone, there's a KYC moment that happens, and increasingly that becomes, oh, sorry, know your customers, Carol. I speak in acronyms, my wife loves, by the way. Actually, probably does love, and then she just ignore me. She's certainly not listening. She's not watching this, so. But so you think about the notion of that relationship between when you get your phone, and to me it's more you get your SIM card. To me, the SIM card that's your identity. It's not even your phone number. The notion of getting one, they have to check. Think about what they check. They get your name, address, social, date of birth. Those are all the same things that Gap would ask of you when you try to get a Gap card to save 10%, right? And they're essentially underwriting you. And so, fundamentally, that's what's at stake, is that these guys have, in a way, underwritten 5 billion people. So how do we take advantage of that? That's an amazing opportunity to distribute applications, obviously, but also to take advantage of the fact that they know who you are. And I think that's partly why they have such a role in here. But I think what you'll see is, over time, as Kurt mentioned, some banks will, some operators will get e-money licenses. In fact, Rogers in Canada announced that they are. Vodafone, Telefonica, and T-Mobile International all have announced that they'll have money licenses, or e-money licenses. And it's an opportune time for them to do this while the whole world hates banks right now, right? So it's an opportunity to kind of like get in there before the banks get leverage again. But they do that because they have this amazing opportunity in the sense that they already know who you are. Rogers is a great example. They have only 6.5 million subs, but they make $4.5 billion in free cash flow a year. So you think about the notion of charging the rich lots of money, like business travelers, and loaning to the poor, right? I mean, that's an underwriting opportunity. So I think they're an amazing channel because they have established one of the hardest things there is to do, which is determine who you are.
I have much more of a general question. In the area of mobile applications, we in this country are so far behind, I feel, compared to Japan and South Korea and India and all that. So I've got a two-pronged question. First of all, this distinguished panel, tell me why we are behind. Number one. Number two, since in all technologies, when some country is behind, they always do a leapfrog to get ahead so that you don't make the same mistake the other may make. So tell me in which area we are leapfrogging, and that way we are not making a mistake the others have made.
Let me address that because it's near and dear to my heart. So I grew up in Europe, and I started in venture in '99 as a young associate. And in 2000, 2001 or so, one of my cases, one of my investment theses, because you remember at the time, this country was still on analog networks, just starting to make the switch to digital. And there's a big debate about TDMA versus CDMA, and where do we go? While the rest of the world was already on GSM.
Is it technology or is it culture?
Well, I think to some extent it's technology in that. In some ways, the reason why the US was behind was because, in fact, they were early in the wave before that. They had implemented mobile phones in analog networks, and Europe and other places in the world had leapfrogged them because they frankly didn't have the fixed cost investment in the ground that they needed to depreciate over a number of years. See, The problem, unlike internet or other software startups that can get started with very little capital, so they're not capital intensive. When you're talking about pulling out networks, you're talking about very high fixed costs, high upfront capital investment that typically people need to kind of see some value over a period of time. So as much as we would like innovation to happen instantaneously, it doesn't, right? There's waves of innovation that sort of have to follow in a semi-predictable kind of manner. So this phenomenon of, let's say, out-of-phase innovation and development, especially as it has to do with things like speeds of network, and you mentioned Korea and Japan, two places that tend to be highly concentrated in a few large cities where, for example, things like ubiquitous broadband access is much easier to do if you're, half your country or more is in Seoul, in big high-rises, than if you got in suburbia in 50 states with a density of the US. So there are some sort of physical, economic kind of reasons why I think big things like network deployment and sort of big physical infrastructure, capital intensive type things will always follow this fall behind and leapfrog as they follow different sort of, call them technology paradigms and new breakthroughs. That said, to your point about what this country has kind of added on the App Store, what have you, I'll point the example of Apple. I mean, people were talking about mobile access to data, and they were talking about things like SMS and texting primarily. And WAP was around for years, and people had been sort of futzing around, let's say, with rudimentary data access applications. But it wasn't until, I would argue, the iPhone came to the fore that the true experience of what mobile consumption, mobile web surfing and mobile consumption could look like. And that, of course, has then created a whole new wave of innovation, imitation, what have you. But the whole, call it the post-PC world of thinking of mobile devices as full citizens of the internet, let's say, I think has very much to do with a lot of the innovation around 10 miles radius from here.
I will echo this last comment. One would have to agree that you would think that the innovation doesn't happen here. So I worked in Japan in early 2000 for a game company. I had my own game company in China. And I used to look back at the US and say, when is it going to catch up? Precisely today, we have way transcended what they're doing in Asia, as well as what they're doing in Europe. I mean, you can think about Shazam, which a friend of mine started in the UK, which he battled for with carriers, and actually you would call and put it up to the radio. And look at what that company has done now with the movement back to Silicon Valley and the funding by Kleiner and whatnot. Like, that company's exploded. You can drive 20 miles north, and I can stop 50 small game studios, Stanford graduates, Berkeley graduates, all starting the most innovative applications in the world precisely because of iPhone and Android. I mean, if you look at South Korea today, 10 million active Android users, over 10 million, there's over 35 to 40% of all Korean mobile phone users are using Android and iPhone. Like, that's amazing. Who would have guessed that? Like, there's just no way. And one more point, MOBA Gaytown, which is the big social network platform in Japan, arguably the Facebook of Japan, bought NG Moko for $600 million. Well, why did they do that? They wanted access to the best game developers in the world, which were here, and they wanted to take that technology and bring it to Japan. Same reason why Aurora Frank recently got bought by DNA. It's because the innovation's here. It's not elsewhere. And you look at San Francisco now, if you look at location-based dating applications, you look at Shopkick, which is doing the retail type of merchant type of things. It's all coming out of here. It's completely coming out of here. And if you talk to the Chinese companies, the Korean companies, and the Japanese companies, they're all looking here now for the innovation, and they're all bringing and looking to acquire companies here and bring them back because that's precisely where the innovation is happening.
So iPhone is one of the leapfrogs, you're saying?
Yeah, iPhone and Android, right? Like, and there are companies that are particularly focused just on Android. Like, they will do nothing but Android development, and it's really coming out of the valley. And there are pockets. Like, there are some interesting companies here in Russia. There's a pocket full up in Finland, but it's really coming out of the valley where you have this youth and entrepreneurialism who are taking advantage of these mobile devices that we didn't have before, and that's really where the excitement is.
40 minutes into the panel, I've seen that a lot of questions have been addressed and asked about security in the mobile space. So it clearly is a very important question that we need to address, right? That said, a general question to the panelists: do you guys see a consolidation between the MDMs, mobile device managers, and the payment processors / telcos in the future? I mean, is there play there? So is there going to be some consolidation among the mobile device managers, like missing devices and all that, and the telco / mobile payment guys here?
I just don't know that I don't know what the first category is, I'm confused.
Who are you buying, Carol? He's saying, who are you gonna buy?
Well, I guess we're in the second category, right? You know, I think there is gonna be a lot of consolidation. This is, one thing we haven't talked about, we're talking about mobile payments, this is super complex, right? People ask, who's gonna win the wallet is the question, right? Well, the answer is, all solutions, even in the most simple market, which is Kenya, is probably the simplest from an ecosystem standpoint. Even in that market, mobile payments are always delivered by multiple actors working together, because it is a complicated, you're basically handling financial transactions between merchants and consumers. And so the most electronic payments today do go through what he called the four-party system, which is global, it's been established worldwide. We're now creating all over the world new systems, and depending on where you are in the world, those types